And so we have a world where there's a lot of pain and absorption of losses and volatility, but it's being realized in different places. Like, okay, the stock market isn't very volatile, but assassination attempts, especially politically driven, are rivaling the Civil War era. So you can't remove volatility. You just move it to be realized somewhere else. Now it's being realized in the social contract. And so the whole idea of my thesis is that Bitcoin is the only remaining place where modern day people get to encounter reality in an unmediated way. That's why it's so emotional and it can be so euphoric and so painful. And as I've said on the show before, Bitcoin is like experiencing the world truly as it is, because every other lived experience in this centrally planned, overly governed reality that we live in is almost like there's padding for you. The title of my essay will probably be Bitcoin, the Last Honest Market. And it's my learnings from my near 14 years in Bitcoin. I think I've talked about this in prior episodes. I talk about this pretty much anytime anyone's willing to listen. But my point is Bitcoin is not only the last free market we have left, but it's the most honest market we have in the world. And what I write here is Bitcoin is one of the only remaining places where modern people encounter unmediated reality, a truly free market, not just for an asset, but for money itself. And I've talked about this before. The world and what the asset is generally about is, I think modern day society is conditioned to think that things like entropy and volatility aren't natural. You know, entropy is the, how do I say? It's the natural state of the universe. Things change. I've done the lawn mower as an example, in the past, and that a lawn, if left uncared for, it gets messy. A tree sprouts in an area that you didn't think. It gets uneven. It gets chaotic. It gets ugly. Entropy is the tendency of things to move from order to disorder, from smoothness to unevenness, from certainty to surprise. What are some more examples? Your room gets messy. Your body gets older. Your lawn gets wild. Your machine breaks down. A forest will change. The weather will change. Life does not hold still. That's the point. And the point is that that's a flaw. That's not a flaw in the universe. The point is that is the universe. Okay. Order exists in our world, but order is not free. Order requires energy. So someone has to clean your room. Someone has to mow your lawn. Someone has to maintain the machine from breaking. Someone has to pave the road. Someone has to regulate the temperature if it's too hot outside. And you want a room with air conditioning, somebody has to build that and regulate that. Someone has to irrigate the field. Someone has to repair what time keeps wearing down. Smoothness is manufactured. Volatility, entropy is natural. And modern day society, I think, has been conditioned to believe the opposite, that a perfectly mowed lawn is the natural state of Mother Nature and the universe, right? And that's just not true. And, things like circuit breakers in the market. Markets are closed on weekends. If a stock crashes too much, the market gets turned off. If someone blows up too fast, they get a bailout. If there's too many losses, they're socialized, right? Central planners and governments, the bigger they've gotten and the more involved they've gotten, have tried to strip out the volatility and the entropy from the world. But you cannot remove what is natural. We are a function of and a product of the universe. We are not its master. And so you're masking it. You're not removing it. And so we have a world where there's a lot of pain and absorption of losses and volatility. But it's being realized in different places. Like, okay, the stock market isn't very volatile, but assassination attempts, especially politically driven, are rivaling the Civil War era. So you can't remove volatility. You just move it to be realized somewhere else. Now it's being realized in the social contract. And so the whole idea of my thesis is that Bitcoin is the only remaining place where modern day people get to encounter reality in an unmediated way. That's why it's so emotional and it can be so euphoric and so painful. And as I've said on the show before, Bitcoin is like experiencing the world truly as it is, because every other lived experience in this centrally planned, overly governed reality that we live in is almost like there's padding for you. You're never going to get too hurt. You're never going to feel too good. You're also never going to feel too bad. You're going to kind of eat within the lines, live within the lines, earn within the lines, behave within the lines. No blade of grass is going to grow taller than any other. Every loss we're all going to share. Bailouts, stock market shutdowns, etc. Modern day markets that aren't Bitcoin, they are centrally managed, smoothed over, subsidized, interrupted, protected, and just generally sedated, right? They've distorted the reality that is natural. And I make the argument in the essay that fiat suppresses volatility, which accumulates fragility. So it kicks the can. It creates an extraordinarily fragile system where all of a sudden you're seeing assassination attempts, rise in crime, rise in homelessness, rise in metabolic disease. People say, oh, Bitcoin's more volatile. More volatile where? In its price? Yes. But what about in the social contract? Bitcoiners do not murder each other Bitcoiners are healthy. Bitcoiners build family. So you cannot remove the entropy and volatility from the universe. We are childs of the universe. We are not the masters of the universe. And this goes into my rants about ego. To think you are smarter than the universe, to think you are the master of the universe, is a failure of ego before anything else. You are not bigger than the world as it is. You need to accept the world as it is. And so Bitcoin takes this opposite approach of fiat, which it exposes volatility naturally by removing any central planner, any third party, any trusted node. And that allows it to build resilience. So where fiat tries to hide volatility, it accumulates fragility. Where Bitcoin allows for volatility, it actually builds resilience. And so that's why these things over time move in opposite directions. As time goes on, fiat gets more and more fragile, and Bitcoin gets more and more resilient. Fiat gets less and less valuable. Bitcoin gets more and more value. And I made this point already, but volatility is not unnatural. Volatility is reality. And I like entropy because volatility sounds like a economic markets term. And in the reality is it's really all about entropy, is that entropy is a natural law of the world that we were born into. And so the lawn analogy is usually pretty good, is an engineered lawn means it's perfectly mowed, it's uniformed, it's controlled, it's predictable, but that requires constant intervention to stay that way. And as I said, if you want to create controlled environments, it's not free. It costs energy. Either your energy, like you have to clean your room, or you have to pay someone to clean your room. And that paying someone is still an energy expense because we talk about time and energy in an abstracted form is money. Again, that's the whole point, guys, is that energy expenditure is how the world works. And a uniform world is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, for example, medicine is uniform to prevent from disease. Housing is uniform to prevent from temperature, right? If I didn't have housing in Chicago, I would die in the winter because it's too fucking cold. So not all uniform is bad. I am fine accumulating time, energy, effort, labor, and dignity in money and then spending my energy either literally by doing work myself or with my capital to build and live in a house, to afford medicine in case anyone I love or myself gets sick. But there's a difference between uniform, like a across the board socializing all losses, and a selective free market ability. Does this make sense? So if I go on, obviously to remove volatility, you need control, and Bitcoin is engineered to remove any control of anything. No one can control shit. And so in my opinion, Bitcoin chooses freedom. And now back to bull markets and bear markets, and kind of the point of this essay is what I tell my companies internally all the time is that in Bitcoin, bull markets will get better than you can ever imagine. However good you think things can get, it will get better. And this goes to show that we're not conditioned to really truly understand the world as it is. We are preconditioned to kind of understand the world as it's been engineered by government and central planners for us to consume it.